So what advice would you have if someone is in a pattern like you're describing, Nicole, where maybe they're just showing up physically because they feel like they're supposed to, or it's kind of their marital duty, they're meeting his needs. That seems to be more often the case. Unfortunately, we don't hear many spouses say, "Well, I knew I just had to meet her needs, so I just had sex even though I wasn't engaging." Unfortunately, it usually goes the other way. If that's the pattern a couple has been used to, but now they're experiencing maybe some traction and recovery, and they're looking to reintegrate a healthier view of sex, what other steps could they take to engage physically with one another in a more meaningful way?
Well, I think the biggest thing for a betrayed spouse to want to even go there is, Brent has already said it multiple times, I've said it multiple times, is that feeling of safety.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling that this person, that I can start to trust this person again. And in order to feel that, she really needs to see her husband doing that hard work of recovery. And not just, it's not just about going to group, it's going to group, doing your homework, and then starting to see changes in how he relates to the family, how he relates to her, showing empathy for her and what she's gone through. Practicing healthy behaviors. If he gets mad, does he go away and isolate with his computer again? Or is he being very open and honest and coming and wanting to talk about what made him angry? Just whatever it was, whatever the behavior was before that was isolating and feeding into the addiction, you need to be able to see very concrete changes on the other side. The biggest thing I think that really helped us is communication. And that sounds really like, duh, of course you need to communicate, right? But it's actually harder than you think, because it does involve some vulnerability. And, Brent and I have talked about our desires, our needs, our expectations. We've had to hash and rehash them. Sometimes it feels like we're broken records revisiting the same thing, but it's about, keeping going back and talking about things, learning continuously about the other one, about the other person. When we get angry, there's a saying that I've heard tossed around, I don't know who it's attributed to, but being curious, not furious, So if he says something in a weird, in kind of a way that makes me go, why'd you say that? Rather than getting mad, puffing up and walking away, which would have been my previous behavior, is coming in and saying, okay, I'm pretty sure you didn't mean that the way you said it. Can you say it another way? Or what are you really trying to say here? So just learning those communication techniques with one another.
I think, and also in the Pure Desire curriculum, they talk about sincerity, ability, durability. So I think that's kind of what Nicole is referencing there. On the guy's part, the woman needs to see that he's sincere about doing this. He's committing to this process. And then she needs to see that there's some ability to do that meaningful change is happening.
Yep.
Like Nicole was saying, not just going through the motions, but is his attitudes changing? Is he being more vulnerable? Is he showing up emotionally to his family? Here's a big one. When she says no to sex, do you get angry still? Or are you able to give her grace in that and talk through that situation? Or do you get resentful? And, for most of us guys, the resentment's passive aggressive. We don't say it outright, but we go stalking into our little corner, our Heidi corner, and feel sorry for ourselves because, it's been 7 days since we had sex and our wife doesn't love us anymore. And so, I think that's one of the areas that, as we shifted the intimacy of the relationship and the trust segment that she saw the most was I did not react then when she says no or not now, that I responded with compassion to that. And that, was putting her needs above my own needs in that situation.
That was huge. I think it's also important to actually have a really honest conversation with each other about what you enjoy sexually. There's a couple of great questionnaires, intimacy questionnaires at the end of the Connected book as well. One for the husband, one for the wife, and it goes into pretty deep detail. But I think that's so key because I know, again, having the wife find her voice, there were times during our marriage when, maybe we wanted to, maybe Brent suggested, let's try this. And I would be like, part of me would say like, well, no, I really don't want to, but I wouldn't say that. I would just be in my head and I'd go along, and then I'd be like, okay, I didn't really enjoy that. And that would be a break again, another break in our relationship, because it's like, well, I wasn't entirely comfortable with that. So,
A lot of that is reenactment from the pornography the guy's been watching.
Yeah. So to sit down and say, be able to say with, these guided questions, like, this is what I like, I really don't like this. It again helped make the bedroom a safe place, because I knew if he knows this about me, and if I know that about him, then we know kind of where our boundaries are, and we won't try to cross them.
Yeah, I want to just echo personally how important that was in our recovery. We'd been married over 10 years when we went through Pure Desire counseling, and realized like some of those conversations maybe we'd had initially, like right around the honeymoon, around the wedding, but like in 10 years hadn't really talked about likes, dislikes, how often, how frequent, who initiates, what things do we feel drawn to, what are our hopes and dreams or desires, what are the kind of things we've wanted to do with our spouse but have never brought, and just having in a non-defensive, and as we brought up at other podcasts, like, and not right before we're expecting to go have sex. So at a time where my wife and I, the kids were, somewhere else, or we were out in a private place, and we could just talk with no pressure. I think Michelle and I would both say we were surprised at what we thought we knew and we didn't know, because we just never talked about it. And sometimes, especially in Christian environments, we're just trained like, be a good Christian, love Jesus, and the sex part will work itself out and you never need to talk about it. But that's just not a very good relationship. I mean, I think about going back to the food analogy, it'd be like if your spouse does all the cooking and they always serve you a meal with onions in it and you don't like onions, but in 10 years you've never told them. Well, in a sense, like, well, who's responsible that there's still onions in the dish? If you never said, I really don't enjoy onions. Oh, well, let's leave those out. Let's do something different. Like, and I think Christian couples especially need to be told it's okay to sit down and say, I like it when you touch me here. I don't like it when you touch me this way. I don't appreciate that. I really want more of this. Like, because I think there is a part of us, hopefully in a relationship that has a measure of health in it, we want to do what's pleasing to the other person. But if we don't know, then it's kind of on both of us. One, I need to be willing to ask and find out. But if on the flip side too, if I'm the other spouse, I need to be vulnerable enough to share those things. So I just, from personal experience, would say, man, that seems like it should have been so obvious, but it really wasn't until we got into recovery and that became a safe conversation. So I think that's putting together two things you said, Nicole, is there both has to be vulnerability to share those things, but we have to feel safe enough with our spouse that those things will be received well and respectfully and in a way that will build our relationship.
Right.
I think, the Bible's very silent on a lot of this stuff. You can make some inferences into Song of Solomon and some of the language that they're using and there, but I think a good way to look at it is all things are permissible, but not all things are profitable. There's definitely some taboos, like watching pornography, definitely not good. Some fantasy scenarios, not good. But for the most part, all the physical touch and stuff, there's really no hard and fast guidelines on that. So that it really needs to be discussed with the couple. What are you comfortable with? What feels good? What doesn't? And have a conversation around it.
Yeah. And I would say if you don't have access to Connected, or you want a different resource, 8 Dates by John and Julie Gottman is also a really good resource. Their 3rd chapter in there is Let's Get It On. And it has questions about sex as well that can start these conversations.
Yeah.